Welcome in to another 1v1 on our Soccer Down Here virtual brewery tour. It's going to be a real brewery tour, we promise. We're working through all the details of how to make this a real brewery tour. Breweries are starting to reopen and figure out what their new normal looks like, and we get to find out about another new normal today. Preston Smelt joins us right now. Preston, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. I'm excited to learn about Anderby Brewing because it's one that I'm not as familiar with. And I know you guys are pretty new, opened last year, right?
Yeah, we soft opened July 27th of 2019, did our grand opening at the end of October of last year, and just started really figuring out kind of where our place was, how things would work best for us, and then, kind of everything fell apart.
Yeah, and we'll get there because, man, that's a rough timeline to start a new place and have this go down. But let's go back to the beginning as things were coming together. A lot of breweries all over the area, a lot of new ones. What was it that you guys wanted to do to be a little different?
So, a couple of things. We wanted to kind of go into an area that didn't have a brewery yet. So we really wanted to move into, part of the suburbs that, had the right conditions for a brewery, but nobody had actually moved in there yet, right? So we really started focusing on the top end perimeter, especially east of 400. Roswell, Alpharetta, Marietta, kind of all those guys had already started to see breweries moving in, but you kind of look east of 400 on that top end of the perimeter, and there hadn't been nobody was really out there yet, right? So we kind of wanted to get into an area that, had the right demographics for a brewery, right? The craft beer consumer lived out there, but there just wasn't anyone out there yet, and so Peachtree Corners ended up being a neighborhood, a community we fell in love with, and everything fit right from a legal structure within Peachtree Corners in Gwinnett County to allow us to kind of get out there and get open and get operating.
How hard was it just to take an idea into an actual business and an actual location with the tap room open? How long did that process take for you?
It took us all in from conception to reality about 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And of that, really the last 7 months of that, right? So we signed our lease in August of 2018. It took 3 or 4 months to work through all the permitting, getting the right design, finding a general contractor, kind of getting all of those things formalized. And then we really started construction demo really of the spot in December of 2018, and then had everything in a way to where we could start making beer by the end of June. So it took, the actual construction part of it was really only about 6 months. But yeah, all the rest of it, all that pre-work that you had to go through before you could even start the construction part of it, yeah, that was a good 18 months.
So then when you started to plan the beers you guys wanted to do, I've noticed something that kind of sets you apart. And look, I'm a soccer guy, so you're going to have to explain this one to me and maybe some of the listeners. The difference in the craft malts that you guys use, you really work to use not just craft malts, but ones grown in the southern United States as well, right?
Yes. And so, the hardest thing to do as a brewery right now with thousands of them around the U.S. Is to find a way to separate yourself. And as, the craft beer, market has evolved over the last couple of decades, it's becoming harder and harder to find out ways to separate yourself. And so my wife and I went to the Craft Brewers Conference last year in Denver. And while we were out there walking around the trade show area, we stumbled across a place called Riverbend Malt House, which is out of Asheville, and started talking to those guys, met the team out there, and, started forming a relationship. And originally, then our concept, trying to figure out the ways to differentiate ourselves, we thought we'd find a little bit more naturally and let it happen over time. But then we started looking into, I started researching craft malts and found out that there aren't a lot of breweries that really made that their focus. And, we decided, hey, that's a really good lane for us. Nobody, especially down here, is really doing it. Around Asheville, there are a few that have done it just simply because of proximity to Riverbend, really. And then, we decided, hey, let's bring that down here. And it's allowed us to do some things that are a little different. It's not without its challenges, obviously, but it's now that we've kind of found our groove over the last year and have honed in on what that does for our beers, it's allowed us, I think, to create a lane that's a little different from what a lot of other people are doing.
It's an interesting approach. How much more difficult is it to go down that road?
As a brewer, it's a lot more difficult. And it took us a lot of work with Riverbend, and a lot of this was trial by error, and that's for better or for worse. So when we first opened, we weren't thrilled with our product quality, and we're talking about this soft opening period. So it'd been August, September of last year. We weren't necessarily thrilled with our product quality, and it took us a while to figure out, kind of what were we missing? Where were those mistakes happening? And we found some of it was just getting to learn equipment, right? It's all brand new equipment, stuff that, a setup that I hadn't brewed on before. So I had to, figure a few things out. And that happens with every brewery and every brewer who opens a new brewery. You figure a few things out, and sometimes you can figure it out really fast, and sometimes you can't. And so from the equipment side of it, we figured things out relatively quickly, but there were still nuances that I was struggling with, and I really had to sit down and, take a few things they had said early on to heart. And it was like, whatever you were making before, whether it was a home brewer or you were brewing somewhere else, doesn't really matter. When you start moving into craft malts, you kind of got to throw all that out and start all over. And you have to do that because the craft malts, a lot of these, or all of it really, not even some of it, it's all grown on these small privately owned farms where you're going to have a lot more variability from season to season, batch to batch. All right, you're not going to get that big mass consistency that you see from the huge barley production or malting that grain malting that you see from the big guys, because the farms are so small. There's a lot of variability, and you just have to learn how to use that and take advantage of it. And so for us, we basically had to scrap every recipe we had, and I had to go back to the drawing board and just really build everything back from the ground up, because as we got to learn, or I keep saying we, but I do all the brewing. So as I got to learn what each type of malt that we were using from Riverbend, how it behaves, how it works, what flavors it brings, we had to kind of just start building everything around that. And it's a lot different, right? So the base two-row malt that a lot of us use as the foundation for all of our recipes, with Riverbend, the stuff that they're getting out of the Carolinas and other states within the southern U.S., it just brings a lot of different flavor profiles. So we had to start rethinking how we used it and the kind of beers we were brewing, and learn how to take advantage of that and make sure that we're getting the most out of it that we can. And for us, the technical sides of it, like, as basic as your mill setup, right? So the first thing you do before you can do anything with your beer is you have to mill the grain. You get it whole, and you have to mill it down and crush it to where you can extract the sugars out of it. And so for us, our mill setting, we had to completely go back and reevaluate just even that basic level of a setup. How much water you use, temperatures of your mashes, all of those grains behave so much differently than the stuff out of the Midwest, Canada, and Europe, that we had to kind of reevaluate all of those little things to ensure that we can get the best product or best final product out of it. And it was some growing pains. It was very hard. The first few months were very difficult. But now that we've gotten it figured out and we know how to take advantage of those malts and put in their best situation, create a structure to where we're putting out the best product we can, taking advantage of those craft malts. Now we've got a lot of our beers are 100% craft malt. And it's 85% probably of our total grain bill, roughly, across our entire product line. And to our knowledge, down here at least, nobody's at that level. Some of the breweries are doing some beers that are 100% craft malt, whether it's Riverbend or another craft malt house, but it's not necessarily at that level across their entire stable of product. And for us, that's our target. Is we want it to be as much of our in every beer, we want it to be as much craft malt as possible. The only time we're going to deviate is if there's a particular malt that we need that our craft maltsters can't provide.
Preston, Smelt, Anderby Brewing, taking us behind the scenes of the recipe process and how the beer comes together. I want to get to the business side for just a second, because you guys opened late last fall. I know you guys had some Atlanta United viewing parties and connecting to the soccer scene. I've found through doing this virtual brewery tour and going out and doing shows at breweries that the soccer community and the craft beer community, there's a ton of crossover. What kind of reaction did you guys get to having Atlanta United matches, soccer matches on at the brewery?
That was, from at least an Atlanta sports perspective, it was the most well-attended events of any sort of the sporting events, right? So, the United fans that we had, and obviously we would have liked it to have been bigger. And I think just as, we continue to grow, we'll start being able to attract more people, hopefully this year, if all things go well.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. And then definitely, hopefully we get into normal next season. One of the things we did is, I'm a sports fan, United included, and we found that United outdrew the Braves, it outdrew the Falcons, and the people who came really were interested in, they followed the match. It just wasn't background, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the sports we have on TV, they end up being background noise, and college football and United were the two that weren't, right? And so we want to keep playing to that. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 TVs in the tap room total. And United was definitely one we could put on all of the TVs. If that was the only thing on, nobody cared. Everybody was happy. And we really started to see a little bit of that early tick from the United fans. There were quite a few in the area, and they really started to enjoy coming out and watching the matches.
Hopefully we'll get back to that. I'm sure you guys had plans on more viewing parties early this season. The soccer season gets postponed and put on hold. How much of an effect has COVID-19 had for you guys?
Oh, it was, a killer is the best way to describe it, unfortunately. We're really new. We're really small. We didn't, we don't own a canning line. So all of our distribution, what little bit we were having, and we didn't really start distributing until the very end of last year. And we had just started in February to really start to see, a good increase and a good mix of that distribution. So by distribution, us sending beer out the back through our distributor into bars and restaurants. And so we had just started to see some really forward momentum with that when COVID happened. And for us, we just didn't have the ability to just pivot and say, okay, well, we're just going to move all of our products into cans, because that wasn't something we had invested in, because it wasn't in our model until late 2020, early 2021. And unfortunately, you just can't turn a dime, turn that around on a dime and just say, okay, well, we'll start canning everything, because it's just not that easy. And it required a lot of capital that we just didn't have, being I don't know what, 9 months into our business when that happened.
Right.
So it was just hugely detrimental. We pivoted. I had access to the ability to fill bottles at least, not efficiently. It was effective, but not efficient. So we started taking our product and just moving as much of it as we could into bottles and selling 6-packs of bottles, which we still do. But as far as a business, I mean, it was 85% drop in business from February to March, April, May. It started picking up in June once we could reopen the tap room, but yeah, it was huge, and we're still not seeing that distribution coverage coming back. Restaurants aren't operating at full capacity; they're not buying as much beer as they used to, and so we're still not getting back to that distribution level, and that's probably still months away.
Yeah, it's so unpredictable right now as to what things look like going forward. So, what level of operation are you guys at right now?
In terms of like what we're capable of doing, or we're probably about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way back to where we were pre-COVID.
Okay.
But even that's probably 75% off of where it should have been by now. Just following the normal growth trends we saw pre-COVID. And most of that's just all due to the distribution. The tap room actually has gotten back to be, pretty decent. Especially Fridays and Saturdays have gotten back to where they're actually doing a little bit better than they were even pre-COVID.
Oh wow!
And that's with reduced seating and having to keep things spaced out and trying to still control flow as much as possible. Which luckily we have a very spacious building, so we're not overly concerned about crowds. We don't have to be as hard on that is most. We space out all of our tables inside, and then we still have we have a really good sized patio that can seat 20-30 people with spacing as well. So the tap room itself, people are happy to come back to, and as a staff, everybody knows that our staff is really good at keeping things clean and wiping down. So we're able to keep that kind of going is well as we can and keep plodding along.
Something that has been pretty universal when I've talked to all of you guys in the beer industry has been the loyalty of your customers. And you guys were just starting out, so you were just really building that connection and building a community. Right. But mentioning that the tap room is doing even beyond what it was doing before, I think that has to show the connection you've already made with people.
Yeah, and I mean, we got really, I guess, lucky in a sense that within the local community and the fact that, for the longest time, and there's some more coming and some that have opened up in our general area, but there was a period when we first opened through March where if you took us about a 6-mile circle and you drew it around us, you wouldn't find another brewery, right? So, we had a pretty good corner kind of carved out for us, and started getting those regulars, people that were in there 2-3 times a week, couple of pints every time they were in there. And then when we shut down and started offering the 6-packs, those same people were like, okay, good, I still can get your beer. And they were coming out and they were buying beer during that whole time. So we were able to keep that connection with those regulars. And then as soon as we reopened, they've been back the last month, or I guess 6 weeks now. They've been back and supporting us, and we've been very, very thankful for them.
That's the thing that I've learned from doing just brewery shows in general, but also doing this virtual brewery tour, is that's the unique connection and the crossover that I see it in the soccer community, where fans are loyal to their clubs, to their teams, who they support. And it's the same in the craft beer industry, and maybe that's why there's so much crossover between soccer and craft beer. But it's special, and to be able to cultivate a fan base, a customer base for you that's like that, it's a credit to the work you guys have done in a short period of time.
Yeah, I would agree with especially the crossover between the supporters of a team like United and how intense they get. The brewery community is the same way. I mean, there are people who they have their favorite breweries, and there is very little short of the brewery itself changing in a way that is going to shake them off that, and that's great. Even when you're new, trying to break in, it's still good to know that's out there because as soon as you can start to build up your fan base, that'll just it'll just continue to grow itself.
So somebody new coming out for the first time, they hear this, they're like, all right, I'm in the neighborhood, I want to check this out. What is the signature Anderby beer?
I would say right now, the crowd favorite is a West Coast IPA that we call "Get Off My Lawn." It's it's kind of I say it's kind of a throwback to that old IPA style that would have been the style of beer that would have launched the craft beer revolution here in the U.S. at least, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I'm in my early 40s. It's the kind of IPA that it's a throwback to that style of IPA that I fell in love with. We've modernized the hop profile a little bit, so I don't want to say it's really like a true West Coast, but it's really close. It's clean. It's crisp. We cannot make enough of it. When we have it, it sells out very fast. We've done at least one canning run of it, and all the bottling we've done of it during COVID has all sold out. So we've got a couple kegs left in the back from the last batch that we brewed about 6 weeks ago, and then it's going to be gone in a couple of weeks, and then it'll come back hopefully in about a month. We did a new one during COVID. We launched a new beer that was targeting as a new hazy IPA called Narcissistic Haze that we were brewing. We brewed it specifically for a beer festival that ended up getting canceled, like all of them have. And the crowd, I mean, a lot of people love it. It is, I mean, we've built some big fans with that beer, and it's almost gone as well. So we'll have to make some more of it here in another month or so as well. But those would be the two. Our Pilsner, we're really happy with. The lagers are, not as big of the popular styles as the IPAs and the sours are right now. But our Pilsner is just fantastic. It's a 100% regionally grown malt bill. We built it around, Carolina grown Pilsner malts and corn. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful Pilsner. And then, we're playing with the sours. We've got a few out there right now. We've got about 3 sours that, people are really enjoying. And then we're just going to keep experimenting and seeing what sticks. And, we're going to let our customers tell us what they really like and what what our core beer should be.
See, I think the one that I might have to come up and make a run to grab a 6-pack, it's your new release, a wheat. I'm a big wheat fan. So it's a summer wheat. Is that how you're pronouncing it?
Wheat. Yeah, wheat.
Wheat? Okay.
Yep. That one we just put out Friday. So this was that was just 4 or 5 days ago. Amazing beer. It is like, especially for July, right? It's 90 degrees outside. That beer is just so easy drinking, so beautiful. Appalachian grown wheat. It is just an amazing beer. A little hint of orange in there. It is just fantastic.
Yeah, you might have just sold me. I might have to make a trip up. I saw that on your Facebook page, and I'm following everywhere, but people who are listening who want to learn more, how do they follow you guys? Where should they find you on social media?
At Anderby Brewing on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. AnderbyBrewing.com is our website. My wife does all the social media. Michelle, she does a great job on Instagram, keeping everybody up tabs on, whatever new beer is coming out, giving a little description of it. And then whatever, we got food trucks on the weekend. So whoever out there is on the food truck lineup, she makes sure, she keeps everybody up to date on all of our events. And, hopefully we'll be able to get back to actually doing more events, over the next month or so is hopefully we get through this whole COVID thing.
Yeah, one of those events sometime before the year is out is going to be a live soccer down here show. We're looking forward to coming up and talking to the soccer fans who have found you guys at Anderby Brewing, and I hope some new ones find it because of this. I really appreciate your time, Preston. Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure.